redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Joining me today is a guest that, listen, I got to admit, she is a superstar in my eyes. She's a young up-and-comer, but she's absolutely amazing. I think she's doing wonderful work for the conservative movement. None other than Amala Ekpunobi. Amala, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I was telling you offline, Amala, there's a lot of Black conservatives that I listen to, and I'm thankful that there are so many more Black conservatives that are kind of in the game. But for some reason, I've been especially impressed by what you've been able to do, especially in such a short period of time. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're 21 years old.
Yeah, you're right. 21.
All right. That's absolutely insane. And now I feel completely embarrassed that, no, anyway. All right. No, this is absolutely cool. One of the things I love about you, you come across as very enduring. You're obviously wise beyond your years. What is that? Where does that wisdom come from?
I think I was engaged in political talk and issues socially from a really young age. From as young as 8 years old, I was with my mom, who happens to be a very radical leftist. So I was constantly being inundated with this whole political speak and groupthink and hive mind. And I was told that there was a certain way that I was supposed to think because I'm a half Black female in America. And I carried that with me for a really long time. And with that comes this need to be an activist and to join the fight. So I surrounded myself with this environment of social justice and became a warrior in that sense all throughout middle school and high school. And when I graduated, instead of even going into higher education, I thought, no, I need to dedicate my time to activism. Nothing's going to change if I don't do this myself and get other people there. So it's just constantly something that has surrounded me. So I think that's just why I'm so entrenched in it and hopefully well-versed in it at this point.
All right. Yeah, I definitely believe you are. You said something that intrigued me. You said you're half Black, and you might be thinking, okay, Carl, that's so silly, that's so stupid. Well, I have a biracial daughter as well, and she's not afraid to say that she's half Black and half white. I see so many people, young biracial people, that feel like they have to be in today's society. They have to be Black, or am I wrong in that? And why do you say that? Because to me, I think that's cool. I think that shows that we're living in, or at least we were, living in a post-racial America.
Yeah, I mean, even more than that, I think it's simply factual. And I think there's this push these days that if you have one drop of Black blood in your body, as they say, you are just Black. If you're perceived as Black to the human eye, you are a Black person. And I'm sure you've heard that exact same thing. And all throughout my young life, I was told, well, do you identify as Black or do you identify with your white side? And you don't get to choose which side you identify with. I simply was born half Black and half white, and that's where I'm at. And I was told constantly, just put Black for your scholarship or your job application. It's going to help you later on in life. And we were just constantly having these discussions about where my identity lied. And I've come to the conclusion now that it's just simply, in fact, I am biracial. That's all it is. Everybody should feel proud to say exactly what they are. And that's who I am. So that's where we're at.
No, I appreciate that. It seems like such a simple thing, but really, just as you mentioned, I mean, I've seen kids that struggle with that, and I'm like, dude, God created you this way. Be cool with it. Don't worry about what other people think about that. It's just insane to me. And I see kids get hung up on it. I think that was one of the things that was refreshing to me. I know you come from the left, which I think that's what impresses me a little more. If you came from the left, I would think that you would be a person that, oh, well, no, I'm Black. So that's kind of cool to me. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about, I watched the stories of us on PragerU about you. And basically, here's what I'm going to ask you some political questions. Obviously, that's your thing. That's what you do, cultural, political. And I love that. But also, I just kind of want people to get to know you. I think you're definitely an up and coming star. And I feel as though for whatever reason I worry about people that get into this this business, if you will. And I wonder if sometimes it'll get too big for them and they'll either disappear, run away from it if they can't handle it. I don't get that sense from you, which is pretty cool. I don't know why. It's just something that I have no idea why. So whatever it is, you seem to have it. I trust you when you speak, and I think that comes across to a younger audience, which is why I think you're blowing up. You spoke to, or you spoke about in the Stories of Us, your dad was a Nigerian immigrant. He was around until you were about 6 years old before your parents divorced. Can you tell us how that impacted you? And then who came around you to kind of be that? Was there a role model that kind of took his place?
Oh, yeah. So when my parents divorced at 6, I would see my father intermittently and go and visit him. And we'd talk maybe a few times a month. And then that became a few months. And then it became half a year and things like that. But who really took his spot was my grandparents. And my grandparents happened to be two longtime married conservatives. And I constantly had their influence sort of swirling in the back of my mind, but I still fell for that radical leftist indoctrination that all these young people seem to fall for. But they were constantly laying a foundation, I think, in the background that I just never noticed because they never pressed me with political issues. They were just parents to me. I would go to school, and while my mom was at work, my grandparents would come and pick me up, and we'd eat dinner with them every night and talk about our days and go through that. So in many ways, my grandmother and my grandfather functioned as my father and were there for me my entire life. And they just happened to be these two white conservatives who don't know at all how much they impacted my life.
Man, that is so cool. So basically, you still had a family structure, despite the fact that your biological father just basically became an absentee dad. The impact of having a somewhat normal family life definitely impacted your,
right.
Honestly, led you to become what you are today. I think. Would you say that's right?
Oh, absolutely. And I never recognized it until I got here and I looked back in my life and I thought, wow, I was learning so many lessons and just becoming a strong-willed individual and somebody who had moral and character through the work that they did and even through the work that my mother did, although we don't agree politically. She was a fantastic mom. I never wanted for anything as a child because of them working in tandem to make sure that we had a really good upbringing.
You know what's cool? I think that's so important what you say, because listen, I was a liberal, ghetto fabulous, and all that kind of good stuff. So I think that I can understand. I feel like I can connect with the average everyday American on a different level, even if they're a Democrat, even if they're a liberal. Yeah, I'm not afraid to go at them. But at the same time, I feel like there's some type of connection. I think it's so important that, like you say, your mom, I think it's important that you say exactly what you did. Yeah, she's a good mom. She's on the left. But this is a thing. This is what the left has been doing, where there's this false dichotomy that exists, I think, where, okay, if you're on the left, well, leftists are crazy. But if you're liberal, if a lot of leftists are, but if you're liberal, if you're conservative, even if you're on the left and you're conservative, you can't get along. But the truth of the matter is, we're still people. We still have the same felt needs. I think God created us in the same ways. We still have the same yearnings and all of that kind of good stuff. As going from left to right, have you been able to, in your opinion, use that experience, even with your mom, to be able to connect with the left better?
Oh, absolutely. So really what's worked for me is bringing in some of the tactics and things that I learned as a leftist into the work that I do now for the conservative side of things. And they're really good at grassroots organizing, telling very personal stories. And I think that's something that our side of the aisle has not been so good at. We're very fact-based, throw the book at people. And I always preface any speech that I go and give or any talk that I give with my own personal story of going through this political journey, realizing who I was, realizing I didn't have to be in a box. And that seems to break down the barriers for a lot of people. A few months ago, I went to a university, Winona State University, to go and give a speech. And I was met with about 50 protesters who stood outside, and they're carrying signs that say PragerU is a hateful organization, white supremacy, transphobia, all these things. And I walked up to them and I said, hey, can you name one thing that I've said or done that has offended you? And can you tell me why? And can we go through it? And at first I was met with a lot of opposition, 40, 50 people not wanting to say anything at all, just staring at me, talking about how hateful I am. And then I rolled up my sleeve and I have a black power fist tattooed on my left arm, unfortunately, from when I was 16. And I said, 4 years ago, I would have been the one organizing this protest. I would have got you all together. I would have helped you make the signs and I would have protested myself. But now I'm here trying to have a conversation with you and it seems like none of you want to talk to me. And immediately it was like the anger dropped in their faces and they went, wait a second. You used to be a leftist? I said, yeah. And if you just come on in, you can listen to the whole story. You can be the first to ask questions. And out of those 50, we got maybe 5 or 6 of those college kids to come in. But
that's
5 or 6 is better than 0. It's better than 0.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's pretty good. That's 10%. So I think that's pretty good. I'm shocked that any one of them went in. So 10%, I think that's a pretty good ratio. You mentioned tactics of the left. You're kind of bringing that to the right. I feel like, this is one of the things that I harp on is framing the narrative, being able to frame the debate. Democrats are good at that type of stuff. Leftists are. Republicans absolutely suck at it. I love the fact that it seems like the conservative movement is starting to embrace people like me, people like yourself, because I honestly, just coming from different backgrounds, I just feel like that's so crucial because we can connect with people or two people that they simply cannot. What are some of the other tactics that you employ now that you're a conservative that perhaps you used to use while you were on the left? You talked about using story, which is amazing. You talked about grassroots tactics. What does that look like?
That looks like going around and having the conversations one-on-one with people. There's only so much that we can do through screens. It's a very powerful medium. Social media is an amazing thing that has gotten us connected in some ways. But actually going out and visiting people and having discussions with people who disagree and encouraging that, I found has been a really big mover of this movement for me. Because when people can see you face to face and see that you are simply a human, it works so much better when we have these conversations. And I always like to make it very clear that I completely understand why people believe what they believe. I think that's something that's missing in a lot of our political discourse on both sides, is this failure to recognize why people might think the way they think and to just say, well, you're stupid or you're ignorant and there's no way I could ever be brainwashed. I'm the lion and you're the sheep. And that's harmful. It's not going to get us anywhere. People who hear that, especially my old 17-year-old leftist self, if I had turned on social media and found a conservative saying that, click, done. That's all I needed to hear. You fit the caricature that I'd always heard of my entire life, and I'm done hearing about your values. We have to break that down and go, you know what? With what you're seeing in social media, on mainstream media, with what you're hearing in school, I can totally understand why you might think this way. And I feel bad about that. That's not a good way to look at this country. Here's a different perspective. You don't have to take it right now, but just give it a thought and get back to me on it. And that's the way that I approach these conversations.
Okay, so no, I just love what you said about. Obviously the human factor. Social media has done so much to kind of detach people from reality, oftentimes, and I've been guilty of it myself. I've gone at people and I'm like, would I say that face to face to someone? And I've had to pull back. Sometimes I'm not going to lie to you, I'm ghetto fabulous enough where I'm like, yeah, I probably would have, but. I wasn't always there, and I don't want to be. I feel like I got sucked into it for a minute, and I'm like, you know what? That's not who I am. I started off blogging. I got radically saved, became a Christian. I didn't care about politics until I got saved, and then I started reading people like Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, Larry Elder, and then later Dennis Prager, and just different people of faith. And, it was, for me, I was like, okay, I need to make a human connection with these people. It was political analysis with a biblical worldview is how I started out. And I felt like things went so far to the left. I was just like, oh, my God, culture, come here. And I fell into the trap, and I'm trying to back away from that. And I appreciate you saying exactly what you have said. You mentioned a couple of people, or you mentioned Thomas Sowell influencing you. How did that come to be? Did someone introduce you to Thomas Sowell, to his writings? How did that happen?
I fell down an internet rabbit hole is what happened.
Okay.
I was working for this left-leaning organization as a youth organizer, and I was just completely overridden with doubt and all these questions. And I actually went to the higher ups at this organization after just watching a lot of blatant racism while working there towards white people, of course. And I remember confronting them about all these questions that I had, confronting them about the racism, and basically being told that I didn't know how oppressed I was, and that it wasn't my fault that I wasn't as angry. It wasn't their fault that I wasn't as angry as I should be. That was basically the response that I got from these people. And I went home and I had, you know, a lot of people ask, is there a light bulb moment? No, it was a bunch of just gradually piling up experiences that led me to go, okay, I have to look into this. And I looked into my ideology with the sake of reinforcing it. I did not want to deviate from what I believed. I just wanted to find the facts that nobody was telling me that would reinforce what I already believed. And I went on the internet and I actually found PragerU videos, and I clicked them thinking, this is going to be so racist. Click, watch. And I watched it and I went, oh no,
Had you heard about
this?
Had you heard about PragerU before you did that?
I had not. And what had really sparked it is I had had an encounter with a police officer that went surprisingly well. I thought, you know, oh my gosh, if I ever get an encounter with a police officer, I'm going to die. That's the end of it. It was a horrifying experience. Yeah. And like I laugh about it, but in the past, like when that happened, I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in my life. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And now I can sit back and go, oh my gosh, what a ridiculous teenager. Oh, so crazy. And I went on the internet and I found a PragerU video called Cops Are the Good Guys. And I, again, clicked it with that intent. This is going to be so racist. Let's watch it. And everything crumbled. And from there, I found Tom Sowell and Larry Elder and Dave Rubin and Dennis and watched all these videos that just completely shattered everything for me.
Wow. You know, and honestly, that mentality when it comes to cops is just so dangerous. And listen, in my past, I've done some stupid things. I've been, you know, arrested in the past I was just living a different, lifestyle. But I always showed some type of respect for the cops because I used to think, man, I'm black. These fools are going to beat me, do something, you know, all this kind of nonsense. But I can tell you that attitude is so pervasive in the black community. And I mean, I believed it growing up that it is really harmful, because if you come across a cop that's just trying to do his job, you instinctively believe, hey, this guy is racist. He's just, you know, and you could be a straight up thug, Amala. It doesn't matter. It's like you put this black label, the black skin on, and it's so dangerous. And I just wonder, and I want to get your take on this. I do believe that it's led to so many blacks having dangerous encounters with cops because there's this narrative that's out there that, hey, cops are against you. If you're black, they want to do harm to you. And instead of people just submitting to the cop, following orders so that they survive another day, they're fighting cops because they believe cops are coming after them simply because of their skin color.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. It immediately escalates a situation. Think about just meeting any random person and immediately having fear for your life. What's that going to do to your reactionary state to this person? It's not going to be good. Whether or not you get extremely emotional, like I did in my encounter, which makes things very blurry and up in the air, or you get reactive and start resisting arrest or saying you're only doing this because I'm black and screaming at other people around you to film everything. And there's so many different reactions that you can have that are all contingent upon this lie that police officers are out to get you. And if you start with that as your baseline, of course, you're going to run into these encounters that are just ridiculous. If we just functioned with respect and go, okay, this guy probably has a family. He's probably worked in the police force for quite some time. He doesn't want to come and kill me and then go to prison for the rest of his life and not be able to see his kids anymore. I think we can both realize that that's the reality here, and I will treat you with respect, and I would ask for the same in return.
Yeah, you said you got an emotional when you got pulled over or something. What happened? What did that look like?
Oh my gosh. So it was probably about 10 o'clock at night. I was on like an old country road in Florida because I lived in a really rural area. You've been there before.
Yes.
And I get pulled over and I see the lights and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. This is the worst thing. This is the worst thing. This is the worst thing. And I grew up with, you know, of course, my mom and her influence and the news influence. So I had constantly heard stories like, you know, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Michael Brown. And of course, these are black men. So I should have been able to deviate that narrative, but I couldn't. And I was always told that if you get pulled over by police, here are the things that you do. And I pulled out my phone and I put the camera on, hands on 10 and 2, like slowly roll down the window, make sure no sudden movements. And I was in tears before I even rolled my window down, just freaking out. Like a fight or flight response was happening in some way that was completely uncontrollable, so visceral. And this police officer was watching me and he's like, I don't know if he recognized just exactly how I felt and just knew how the media was covering his job and all this stuff, or if he was just like, why is this girl freaking out?
Right.
And he just looked at me and said, ma'am, I am not here to hurt you in any way. You were just driving a little bit too fast. I'm not even going to give you a ticket. He's like, take a moment, collect yourself. And when you're ready, just drive home. And he has no idea how much good he did for me in just that moment alone. And yeah, that was my only encounter, really. And now I work with LAPD here in Los Angeles. So it's been just a complete 180 for my life.
You know what? That's so cool. That literally sent chills down my spine, because I sat there and thinking you're a very logical, reasonable person. But imagine a ghetto fabulous person sitting there. That could have escalated quickly. They're having those emotions, perhaps not crying or whatever, but just getting pissed off this cop. I mean, it just could have went a different area. All right. So let me get your take on I know your time is valuable. Let me get your take on a few things and we'll let you go here. I want to get your take on the impact of CRT on the Black community. Your take on, you were talking about fat phobia the other day. I don't even know where that came from, but I want.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that.
I want to hear a little bit about that. I wrote a column about heterophobia years ago. I feel like we're headed back there, but CRT, fat phobia, and this transgender craze, where men aren't men and women aren't women, the impacts that they're having on society and what you've been saying about it.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, let's start with critical race theory. Critical race theory is exactly my childhood, I think, distilled down for kids even younger. And that's really horrifying for me. I remember, I think my first political memory was probably in 2008, and I got to stay up late that night, and I was so excited to stay up past 9:30 because I get to watch the election results come in. And my mother made sure we were sitting in front of the TV, and when Barack got elected, she just bawled her eyes out. And I remember thinking, like, this woman loves Barack Obama. She's got the whole poster, and like, she was knocking doors for him. Why is she crying? And she's like, I just want you guys to see the first Black president being elected. I never thought such a racist country could do that.
Wow.
And boom, struck me. Done. 8 years old. Being Black is important. Being Black is something that is not loved in this country. Being Black gets you judged. Being Black puts you in a wrong position in this country immediately. And that's really all it takes is one sentence. Now imagine sending your kid to school, your 5-year-old to school, and for 5 hours a day, they're being taught about critical race theory and how their Blackness is inherently viewed as something bad in this country and that how white kids are oppressors. It is so detrimental. And all of this ideology teaches you that if you are a victim or an oppressor, it doesn't matter what class you're in, your only goal should be to be an activist and to convince other people of their victimhood or their oppressorhood in this country. And it really attacks something innate in children that is, I want to do good, I want to be part of a group, I want to make friends, and I want to do something positive. And to attack that in a child on this false premise of racism and division is disgusting. So I've been really on the track of just fighting critical race theory as much as I can, calling it out as much as I can, because I just do not want to see another child go through exactly what I did for absolutely no reason, for something that is so false. Man, it gets me so upset.
No, I'm glad. That's cool. I love the way you framed that too. That was excellent. You know, at the time that you were, your mother and yourself were watching Barack Obama climb and become the first Black president or biracial president of the United States. I always say that because that gets me pissed off. Just to be blunt. I mean, my daughter is biracial, and I lived in a time. I moved from LA to Florida, where when I moved here, I was like, good God, I left LA to try to get away from gang violence. And then I came here and there were rednecks with rifles in the back of their trucks and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh my God, these fools, I'm trying to leave craziness and I'm going to get lynched here and all that kind of stuff. Totally different. Now I'm big on the Second Amendment, concealed weapons carrier, all this kind of nonsense. But around that same around that same time, I can remember when Barack Obama got elected. I happened to be outside working in the yard, and this was just the most random thing, Amala, but there were some kids that walked by, probably preteen, maybe 13 or, whatever. But it was a black kid, a white girl, an Asian boy, and a black boy. And I just, and it was the weirdest thing. It's like I just looked up and it was like slow motion all of a sudden. And I thought in my head, oh my God, we're cool now. Like I literally thought that. I was like, we're cool now. We're like in this post-racial society. I had lived through the LA riots. I was there, literally started right around the corner from my girlfriend at the time. And I'm like, man, we're here. We're here. And then Barack Obama gets in and he starts racializing so much. And I started getting so mad. That's when I became active in the conservative movement, because I was like, okay, we've arrived. And here you have this biracial president who says he's the first black president of the United States. And instead of telling people, hey, you can, or black people, listen, you can do anything you want in the United States of America. We've kind of arrived. Of course, you're always going to have racist bigots, so on, et cetera. But who cares? They can't stop you anymore. But he did the total and exact opposite. I think he did so much damage to the black community. It's unbelievable.
He really did. It's what's crazy about that is you watch that so often. It's like a pattern of watching black people or biracial people get these crazy amounts of success and then use it to hearken on this point that America's racist. It's unbelievable. And how people do not see it and look through it is just, it's so frustrating. But I was one of those people. I saw it and I didn't look through it. And that's what we talk about now is just look, all these people who have this fame and these massive platforms and piles of money living in white neighborhoods are crying to you about racism.
I know. It's absolutely amazing to me. All right. A couple of more things and then we'll let you go. I want to talk about the transgender craze. I want to get your take on that. But also, I saw you. I watched at least a snippet. I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, but you were talking about fat phobia. You were talking about the Johnny Depp, the Amber Heard thing, which I haven't been as into. But sure. I want to get your take on that because it's fascinating to me. I know that conservatives need to be involved in culture. I personally like Johnny Depp. I met him by accident. Well, I didn't really meet him. He happened to be at Disney World. And I was standing right next to him. My wife and I had no idea. And he was just cool. And he just raised his hand like that. And we were like, we're not going to out you. And it was cool. It was just one of those weird moments like, really? Am I sitting next to Johnny Depp? But anyway, that's that. That's my story. That's your Johnny Depp. Yes.
That's awesome. It's more than what I have.
Yeah.
What this trial has pointed out for me, I think, above making accusations and talking about the back and forth, because I'm sure there was a lot of toxicity within this relationship. We're talking about drug abuse on both sides, and I can't imagine what that does to a relationship. But there is a pivotal moment in this where they play audio of Amber Heard talking about Johnny Depp and hitting him and saying, go, Johnny, tell people about it. I'm a woman. You're a man. Who's going to believe you? Right. And it pointed out something that I think a lot of conservatives and classical liberals have been talking about during this whole #MeToo movement, #BelieveAllWomen. We cannot function as a society on those ideas of #BelieveAllWomen. You can't look at a group of people and say, because you are born the way you are, I'm going to believe everything you say. Sure. It gives them a step up. It gives them something to manipulate. And that's exactly what Amber Heard has done here. And while millions of people are watching this day in and day out here in the United States and probably all over the world, what it begs the question of is how many men have gone through this exact same experience and A, not come forward, or B, had their entire reputation tarnished in a way that you cannot recover from, because women who want to abuse their power and abuse this believe all women stance that we've decided to take in this country have decided to be manipulators and take that to court, or at least push that out to their community and ruin a man's reputation. And men don't have the same platform as Johnny Depp or Amber Heard. So they're going unseen, unheard, and they're victims to this ideology as well.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm glad you're pointing that out. Let's talk about the transgender movement and anything else that you want to sound off of in closing. And let me say this. I don't know where you lie as far as faith is concerned, but I'm going to be praying that you marry a Christian guy and have some Christian babies, because I think you would. I think you and your children will do wonders for the United States of America in that way. So anyway, but
thank you so much.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. But no, I mean that in all sincerity. It's a little cray-cray. I know a lot of people don't say that, but I feel like conservatives need to have babies, for God's sakes, and particularly Christian ones, and in my opinion. All right, so your take, transgender movement.
Sure. Unfortunately, I'm going to ruffle some feathers here and say that I think it is just a very trendy movement that we're going through right now that unfortunately a lot of young people are falling victim to. I ended up doing an episode about a young person, relatively young, older than me, but a man who is grown in his late 20s, I believe, late 20s or early 30s, who is now making videos on the internet titled Day One of Being a Girl through day whatever he's at now, I believe in the 50s. His name is Dylan. And Dylan, when I covered him on my podcast, which was about 2 weeks ago, had about 1.9 million followers on the platform TikTok, now has over 3 million followers. So It's an ever-growing movement of particularly young men and women, but women, let's be honest, following people like this and affirming it and encouraging it. And I've taken a lot of time to look into the actual studies around this, to talk about what the outcomes are of this sort of ideology, particularly for young people. And they're not good. We're talking depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation at a rate that's above any other demographic in our nation. And all of this from people who claim to care about trans lives. I will fully admit that body dysphoria is a real and tangible illness that people experience in their lives. Now, is it at the rate that we're seeing right now? No, which points to me that it's a trend. And if we allow this trend to take hold of our society while ignoring the outcomes, while ignoring the fact that we are not giving the proper treatment to these people and certainly not giving them treatment that ends up saving their lives, we are doing a massive disservice. And it's all with this idea that however you were born is absolutely perfect and whoever you are is perfect. There's no ideal to strive towards. There's no better view of mental health, of physical health, as we've seen with this whole fat phobia craze. There's nothing that you need to do to make yourself better as an individual. In fact, I will just blindly affirm anything that you say. And that's where we're at right now. And the outcomes are horrendous. And for what I really do with my podcast is I talk about these influencers because people are already seeing them, and that generates a little bit of steam. But I give the arguments that I read in these studies, and I say, hey, I'm not doing this to change your mind, but guess what? You've seen the man behind the curtain now because you've listened to me. You know about the outcome. So you can't feign ignorance and say, oh, I didn't know. Now you know, and it's up to you to make a decision about this.
Man, good stuff. Good stuff. I mean, I absolutely love that. I remember, I think it's been about 10 years. I hate saying that. I never thought I'd be the one on the other side of the camera, Amala, talking about, it was about 10 years ago. It's so weird, so crazy, almost embarrassing.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll see if you say that in 20 years. But no, I'm just like, what's crazy is I remember years ago reading a column, and I started researching this. It was at least a decade ago, and it was a gentleman who was a psychologist at Johns Hopkins University, and he talked about how when they performed the first transsexual, at the time it was called, surgery there, how I'm pretty sure it was a male transitioning to a female, but they started doing these surgeries, and then the people would come back and they would be suicidal. They would be angry. They would be depressed. And so they started adding, okay, before you get the surgery, you're going to have to have some counseling. And when they did this, overwhelmingly, I think it was, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's been so long, but I believe it was about 85% of people would be like, okay, yeah, I really don't want to transition. I'm gay, I'm this or that, or they would just adapt to their natural sex. So as a result of that, Johns Hopkins University stopped performing those surgeries. It's insane. And then this guy came and spoke out about it, and he just got bashed. I can't even find him anymore. But cancel culture, before cancel culture actually blew up. But anyway, I appreciate you saying that. Will you just real quick tell people how you got started with this? And we'll end this here. I know I'm taking a lot of your time here.
Sure. Well, yes. So, I started off as that leftist activist, as you guys heard, after I graduated high school, and I did that for about a year. And I left that and I thought, never doing that again, never getting into anything political or cultural. What's something that's pretty cut and dry and that I can do day in and day out? And I went into medicine and I did that, started studying to be a nurse and wanted to be a midwife. And about a year and a half into that whole process, I was looking around and looking on social media and going, oh, wait a second. Every single narrative that I was taught as a young person and that was reinforced by legacy media now and social media is back. And it's here and it's really pervasive and millions of people are listening to it and thinking that's what they need to know about the world. Somebody's got to do something about it. So I started making videos on the internet just as a hobby, and they blew up because I think, unfortunately, people weren't expecting to see somebody who's saying what I'm saying who looks like me. Sure. Although I think that's not going to be as unusual in a few years from now. And it just took off. And one of my videos landed on a desk at PragerU, and now I'm here. So I couldn't be happier. And I always say, if tomorrow all of these problems go away, you will not see me doing this job. I will leave and I will put down the microphone and the camera and all this stuff and I will go back to leading a normal life. But as long as these problems are still here, I'll be here.
All right. Well, listen, I tell you what, I'm glad to have you in the fight to, I believe, save America, restore American exceptionalism. And it takes all types, in my opinion. God has created all of us differently with unique gifts. You're certainly gifted at taking on cultural issues, and you do it in such a loving way. I mean, even a guy that can be edgy like me and Ghetto Fabulous, I'm like, hey, listen, this chick is doing it absolutely right. So congratulations to you. And I'm so glad that you're out there and young people like yourself are out there. And I pray to God sincerely that you impact millions and millions and millions of more people and that you have Christian babies.
I will take it. Thank you so much for having me on. It's really been such a pleasure. And I've been listening to you, and I listened to you when you were on the radio at Salem Radio. So I'm a fan of yours as well.
Thank you.
I think the more of us that are out here giving this message, the better. So I'm so happy to be a part of it.
All right, cool. Amala Ekpunobi, thank you so much for joining the Carl Jackson podcast today. It's been fabulous. So I appreciate you.
Anytime.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Amala Ekpunobi. What I wanted to do is just to, for those of you out there that know her, obviously she's blown up. She talks about a lot of cultural issues, but I wanted to get to know Amala, the person, and how you get to know her journey, get to know her story. So I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure that you follow me. You can do so on Twitter, on Parler, at True Social, The Carl Jackson Show. I'm on Twitter a lot, so if that's your preferred place to go, feel free to go there. True Social, I'm on there as well, trying to get more active on there. And then anywhere podcasts are found, guys, please like, subscribe, share, review. That's going to help our numbers grow. That's going to help. That's going to help me. That's going to help us fight to save America, to restore American exceptionalism. And that's why we're doing all of this. So anywhere podcasts can be found, SalemPodcastNetwork.com is an easy place to go. TheCarlJacksonPodcast.com. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.